Hello and welcome to America Latina Story. The Andes Cordillera has always been a formidable obstacle to air navigation. It was crossed for the first time by Luis Candelaria on April 13, 1918, on a Moran-Saunier plane, and again in December of the same year by Lieutenant Godoy, who flew over its highest peaks. In 1921, Adrienne Bolland was the first woman to fly over it, but it was not until July 14, 1929, that the two Frenchmen, Mermoz and Guillaumet, established the first commercial link for aeropostal between Santiago de Chile and Mendoza in Argentina. The pass was now open. All obstacles had apparently been vanquished for the Transcordillera air links between these two great countries of Chile and Argentina. But men had forgotten the terrible power of the mountain. The date is October 1972. The rugby team of the Old Christians Club of Montevideo, made up of students from the best college in the capital, the Stella Maris, is about to travel with some parents and supporters to go and play a game with the team of the all-boys club of Santiago de Chile. To make the trip, the club had chartered a Uruguayan Air Force twin turboprop Fairchild FH227D aircraft with 40 seats and a crew of 5. The pilot was Colonel Julio Cesar Ferradas, a very experienced pilot, assisted by inexperienced co-pilot Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hector Lagurara. The plane departed on October 12th. However, due to extremely bad weather conditions over the Andes, the plane had to stop overnight in Mendoza, at the foot of the mountains. The following day, October 13, the weather had hardly improved, so the pilots decided to cross the Cordillera through the Planchon Pass to the south, which culminates at 2,500 meters, and then head north towards Santiago. Given the cloud cover, the pilots were flying under instrument meteorological conditions, and the inexperienced co-pilot, who was being trained during the flight, wrongly estimated the plane's position, thinking he had crossed the mountains. He turned north and impaled the plane onto the high peaks. The plane struck the side of a mountain, shearing off both wings and the tail section. What remained of the fuselage slid down a mountain slope like a bobsleigh for 725 meters before being stopped by a snowbank at an altitude of 3,570 meters in the middle of an ocean of high rocky peaks near the border between Argentina and Chile. 12 persons died during the crash. Others would succumb later on from their injuries and the impossible conditions. From that moment onwards, in this freezing and barren environment, the 33 survivors, some of them critically wounded, would have to use their imagination and all that was at their disposition to keep alive. 8 days later, after they had learned through a transistor radio that the search for survivors had been called off, the question of possible starvation rapidly arose, and the members of the group faced the grim reality of having to resort to cannibalism and eating their dead companions if they wanted to survive. Film and books narrate their ordeal in lengthy and sometimes gory details. But this was not enough. 17 days after the crash, at midnight on October the 29th, an avalanche struck the airplane and filled the fuselage, killing 8 people as they slept. Eventually, 2 months after the crash, on December 12, 2 survivors, Nando Parado and medical student Roberto Canessa, embarked on a trek across the frozen mountains to look for help. They were not equipped in the least for the conditions of the expedition, but after 10 days and 25 miles of an arduous walk, they managed to reach the Rio Azufre in Chile and encounter muleteer Sergio Catalan, who rapidly conveyed the news to the rest of the world 72 days after the crash of Flight 571. There remained 16 survivors. The legend known as the Miracle of the Andes was born. But the miracle had its dark side. The press asked more and more pressing questions to the survivors as to the manner of their survival. Soon came the embarrassing question of what they had eaten during their 2 months of isolation. How did they manage? Where did they get their food? And it was not long before the truth emerged. The survivors had eaten the corpses of their companions. They had done what a civilized person could not do. Immediately, the cherished, miraculously saved, became abominable monsters, unworthy of being part of humanity. Then, little by little, we do not know really how, the survivors succeeded in having their logic accepted, that of individuals reduced to the last extremity who deserved compassion instead of indignation. They managed to convince their audience that what they had done was perfectly acceptable, and even that it had been in some way an act of saintly communion. This process was accompanied by the public display of an intimate human experience, which certainly had been exceptional, but which should have remained in the private sphere. Under these circumstances, it was not difficult to foster a certain unhealthy voyeurism. The sensationalism industry had a new product, hence the many books and personal memoirs, films and documentaries, conferences and talks on the tragic event that we have mentioned. Some specialized travel agencies going as far as organizing morbid pilgrimages to the site of the crash. On a more sensible plane, far away from that agitation, the father of one victim had received word from a survivor that his son wished to be buried at home. Unable to obtain official permission to retrieve his son's body, Ricardo Echavarren mounted an expedition on his own with hired guides. He had prearranged with the priest who had buried his son to mark the bag containing his son's remains. Upon his return with his son's remains, he was arrested for grave robbing. A federal judge and the local mayor intervened to obtain his release, and Echavarren later obtained legal permission to bury his son. Thank you for watching this program. Do not hesitate to subscribe to the channel. This is all for now. Goodbye.